All right, the single arm dumbbell bench press is another exercise it's just not tradition. It's not a traditional exercise. There's not a lot of people that do it. It doesn't belong to a faction. It's not a bodybuilding exercise. It's not a powerlifting exercise. There's really nobody that claims the single arm dumbbell bench. I learned about it working with athletes, and in the performance world, it was a little bit more common. So that's where I saw it. I still never saw it being used as a true strength exercise. I see it just like I described the RDL. This is not an accessory exercise. And for me, it's more of a primary strength exercise than a traditional 2-arm dumbbell bench press. And I'll tell you why. The first thing is everybody knows that I'm a big proponent of low rep sets. So I'm going to start on barbell, and that's where all my barbell lifts are 1 to 3 reps per set. It's because I can put the heaviest weight on the bar. It only makes sense to me to take advantage of that. So I don't understand, outside of learning the exercise or being new to the exercise, using high rep sets with a barbell. If the advantage of the tool is load, I want to use it as it's intended. And I believe the barbell is intended for heavy loads. So I stick to 1 to 3 reps per set. People will say, well, we do a lot of sets of 5. Well, you're acknowledging low rep sets are good, but you're not committing. The full commitment is 1 to 3. The 5 is nice, but honestly, a lot of people would be better if they'd go lower, fully commit to the idea, and train in that manner. I do the same thing with single arm dumbbell bench. So I take 3 exercises per day and create a cascade where I lift my heaviest on the barbell. Today I did bench press. Now I'm going to come and do single arm dumbbell bench press. If I do flat bench, I'm doing flat single arm. If I do incline, I'm doing incline single arm. So I also stick to 1 to 3 reps with this exercise because you're not going to hit a 1 rep max with 2 dumbbells in hand. The logistics of picking them up, putting them down, and leaning back does not make sense to me. So for the 2-arm dumbbell bench press, I actually stick to the 4 to 6 range. That's where I land on the dump. And sometimes I'll go 8 to 12, but I'm not going 1 to 3 because the logistics of picking up weight that's at that level of max effort for me for a dumbbell, it doesn't make sense. I'm not a proponent of somebody handing me the weights. I can't always rely on them. And quite frankly, it's hard to find people strong enough to hand them to me. Much less the idea that, people just don't hand you things in life. I like the idea that I'm going to pick it up and do it myself, and then I'm going to put it down. I don't ever slam. I lift as heavy as I've ever seen anybody around me lift with dumbbells, and I've never slammed a dumbbell. So the idea is you should be able to pick it up and put it down. If you can't do that, you probably shouldn't be lifting it. That's just a mindset I have. But with the single arm dumbbell bench press, what's unique is I can pick up with 2 arms, right? So I can pick up my max weight for 1 arm because I can use 2 to get them to my knee. And then I can lean back and do it just fine. So that's the main reason. The other reason is if I could pick up my max weight with 2 dumbbells, I would. I really believe in the idea of mechanical tension, and I don't know if it gets much more than the single arm dumbbell bench press. It's not that different from a barbell. The stabilization is a little bit more demanding, but it's not drastic enough, to where there's a little bit of a balance, but it's not like you're on one leg. One-legged exercises to me are much more unstable. The key when you do this exercise is you want the shoulder blade that you're pressing with, you want the bench behind it. I've seen people, they're off to the side and their shoulder blade's not on top of the bench. And that does make it harder. And sometimes with athletes, we actually use a half off body, body halfway off the bench purposely to make them create their own stabilization with their lower body and their upper body. But when you're training for max strength, you don't want to train it that way. So you want the bench behind the shoulder blade, that's key. And then you never want to sacrifice form. And I always say, I'm going to be the strongest. If I want to punch somebody, I'm going to pull back as far as I can and punch. I'm never gonna stop, right? The shortened range of motion might be a short-term win, but it's not a long-term win. It's actually gonna keep you from progressing. So starting day one, it's full range of motion. I see people struggle with the offhand. So I'm gonna show you what I do with the offhand, but it's gonna act as an anchor. It's gonna be as if it had a dumbbell in its hand, but it's not. Sometimes you'll see with big weight, it's kind of natural for your arm to kind of swing out, and that's fine. But I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like. I'm not using a lot of weight, but I'm gonna pick up the dumbbell and lean back just like I would with my max weight. I use 2 hands, put it on my knee, all right? I got my dumbbell on my knee. I'm gonna lean back and I'm gonna start the dumbbell at the top, right? I'm not bringing it to my chest. I'm starting it at the top. So I'm gonna kick back, hand off. This hand stays here. Down, press, that's it. All right, the other idea is your feet. You're gonna feel when you start using max weight, I've pressed 180 pounds in one side. All right, I weigh 270 to 280. So when you have that much weight compared to your body weight in your hand, it's gonna wanna pull you off the bench. To stop that, you're gonna drive this foot in the ground. You're gonna push actively against it. Same side, if I'm pressing with my right, I'm driving my right leg into the ground. So your feet position do matter, and you'll feel it. If your feet are too far out front, you can't push. Sometimes you'll self-organize and you'll figure it out on your own. But those are staples, because if you don't know how to pick the weight up and get into the position, you're just gonna limit yourself on your weight. And I'm not saying for somebody who's never done this exercise to start maxing out. That's not what I would suggest. In fact, if that's you, what I would suggest is maybe building out a 6-week plan where for the first week, you do 3 or 4 sets of 8. The second week, you do 3 or 4 sets of 10. The third week, you do 3 or 4 sets of 12. And then after that third week, I'd start introducing some heavier weight. So instead of 3 sets of 8, I would do 2 sets of 8 and 2 sets of 4. You're doing the same amount of reps you did week 1, but you're adding intensity. That 7th week, I'd probably do 2 sets of 10 and 2 sets of 5. Last week, 2 sets of 12, 2 sets of 6. After those 6 weeks, then you can start adding some more intense sets. But give yourself a runway to learn the exercise. The higher rep sets are gonna allow you to practice a little bit more, build some tissue tolerance. And this is an exercise you don't wanna take the risk on this one, because you'll feel this is a vulnerable position. So if your arm is shaking and your body, you'll know it. If you can't handle the weight, don't even try it. And I'll just be real honest with you. This is the exercise, when I hit the 180, I hit the 180 for 2 actually. I don't want to try for more, because honestly, it is one of the more, people will say I'm not scared of anything. Fear is actually a great tool in the weight room, because that impulse, if you've got a little fear, it makes you lock in. It makes you leave it all out. And what I mean by that is, imagine you're bench pressing, you're gonna go for a max, and you don't have a spotter. You should be a little scared. And one way to make sure that you don't end up living out what you're scared of is to erase apprehension and push as hard as you can, as fast as you can. So I say that to say, let that fear kind of naturally help you, but not in a foolish way, because this is a vulnerable position. If you're not used to it, just respect the exercise, respect the process, and don't just jump in week 1 trying to max out with one arm. That would not be a smart move. After that, I'm training this just like I'm training the barbell bench press. I'm using bands, I'm using low rep sets, I'm using speed, all of it. So I said bands, and you're probably thinking, well, how do you train bands? You easily take a regular band. This is one of the easiest things you could do. If you don't have enough dumbbell weight, this is another way to add weight to the dumbbell, but it's also, when you use bands, the reason I use them is you're going to prolong the acceleration phase or the concentric phase. It allows me to push longer, harder. And then it's going to pull it back down, and there's some benefits to that. But that's the main idea. So people do use it for adding weight if they don't have enough weight, but that's why I use it. So I'm going to take the band like this, put it around my back, just like this, like I'm going to push, and then I'm going to grab the dumbbell just like normal, 2 arms. One arm comes off. I still got the band in my palm. Lean back. Done. Very easy. You can get a bigger band, you can get a smaller band, a lot of options with the band. But it's an exercise that people don't use simply because it just doesn't belong to any faction. Nobody's made it popular. So if your bench press is stalled, if your sides, if your chest, if your triceps stalled, add this exercise. I think when you do it in the gym, you're going to attract a lot of eyeballs. They're going to want to know what you're doing. Let them know how it's going, and I would love to know how it's going for you, so let me know.